this is an interesting topic, right? I think it's an interesting topic because I've worked at the fitness center for so long. The average age of our members is about 55. I've heard many people lament about their metabolisms. Non-existent is a word I hear used a lot. Slower than molasses is a phrase I hear used a lot. And so some people, when they refer to their metabolisms, they're acting like they're broken, that they're different from everybody else, and there's something seriously wrong with their metabolism, and that's the reason they are gaining weight or having trouble losing weight. And while that may be true, there are metabolic disorders that do cause that, okay? And then you should see a physician about that. Most of us, it's because of changes in dietary habits and lifestyle habits, physical activity habits. It's changes that come from that area of our lives that we just kind of all of a sudden after the age of 40 or 45 or 50 start noticing this extra weight gain because it's starting to catch up. So yes, your metabolism is slowing, but we can control some of that, and so there is hope out there. So let's look at what our objectives are for today. We're going to first define metabolism so you know what it is when you refer to your metabolism. There are 3 different categories that include our daily metabolic rate, or how many calories we burn in a day. So we'll look at what those 3 broad categories are, and we'll really go through step by step and explain to you what's happening in those categories in regards to your metabolism. And then we're going to learn how you can actually measure your metabolic rate. How many calories do I need in a day? There are a few ways to do that. And then I'll give you some tips for increasing your metabolism. Some tips for increasing that metabolic rate. About 10 of them to be specific. So let's first define what metabolism is. Metabolism refers to all of the reactions by which the body obtains energy from food and spends energy from food. Or it's the body's way of converting food into energy and then using that energy to sustain your body or to use it to rebuild your body, okay, to repair your body. That includes every single reaction that happens in your body. And this is why it's broken up into 3 broad categories. And those broad categories, we usually measure them using calories, okay? And I have a big molecule of ATP up here. ATP is energy. When your body breaks down food, it breaks it down enough so that it can create ATP. So that's exactly what your body uses. When we refer to energy, I'm going to be referring mostly to calories today, but wanted you to understand that the process of how your body metabolizes food and uses food and creates energy is very complicated. Okay, we're not going to get into the ins and outs of that today, but just so you have an idea, that's what it looks like chemically in your body. So the 3 big broad categories that we talk about when we talk about metabolism. First, we talk about your resting metabolism, or how many calories or how much energy your body needs at rest. Believe it or not, 60 to 70% of the energy you need comes from things you do at rest. At rest. So if you sat in a chair and did nothing all day long for 24 hours, you still would need quite a bit of calories a day just to maintain organ function, muscle function, and actually fat actually needs some calories too in a day. Then there's the thermic effect of food, all right? About 10% of your total energy expenditure a day comes from eating. Imagine that. Your body needs to use energy to digest food, to process food. So eating burns calories. The third category is the effect of physical activity. So how much energy your body needs to do physical activity. Now that might be going for the walk, going for a run, going for a bike ride, lifting weights. But it also is brushing your teeth, washing your dishes, walking up the stairs. So it's everything encompassed. And that's why it's 15 to 30% of our daily needs. Why there's such a broad range, because some of us do much more activity than others. So we're going to examine each of these different categories. When we talk about the sum of these categories, if we added all the energy expenditure from each of those categories together, we call that our total daily energy expenditure, and we measure that in calories, okay? So that's why with the USDA, On your food labels, it'll say the typical person needs about 2,000 calories a day. That's how they get that, all right? It's an estimation, though, as we'll find out when we look at our equations. Those equations have broad ranges of error, and they might not fit for you appropriately. So let's first begin with the resting metabolic rate, because this is where the snafus usually come in. When people are trying to lose weight or they're finding that they're experiencing weight gain, this is usually the culprit most of the time. So resting metabolic rate, the number of calories your body needs in order to maintain physiological function over a 24-hour period of time. That includes your organs, and about 75 to 80% of your calories at rest are used by your organs. Think about it. Your liver metabolizes fat. It needs energy to do that. Your heart needs to beat. Your brain needs to think. Your lungs need to expand. Many other processes occurring in your body. These all require energy, which require then food to make that energy. So you have about 75 to 80% of that resting metabolic rate from your organs. You didn't lift a finger, but there's a lot of calories still being burned. Fat-free mass, or muscles. Muscles account for about 20% of the calories used in a day. And that's even if you're just sitting doing nothing. Okay, think about it. Your neck muscles, they have to hold your head up. Your abdominal muscles, they keep you upright. Muscles are being used all the time. Even if you're not moving your arm up and down, they're still being used. About 20% of your calories used from muscles at rest. Fat accounts for about 5% of your calorie needs at rest. There's always fat being used for energy, and that when you do that in your body needs to use energy to get energy from fat. There's always an exchange going on inside your body between energy, all right? So even fat needs about 5% of calories a day. So what are some things that influence this darn resting metabolic rate? Well, genetics. People always like to say that, I have a problem losing weight or gaining weight because of my genes. And that might be true, because the number of fat cells that you have can be based on genetics. They have done some studies. What they've seen is that women who have an ideal weight, they have about 27 billion fat cells. Women who are obese have about 75 billion fat cells. All right? Now, you usually acquire all your fat cells by the age of 16, but there are 3 times in your life where they're kind of rapidly put into your body or created. And so it's recommended that during those 3 times in your life that you don't have a lot of overfeeding or overeating occurring during those times. Got to tell you guys, all of us here, we can't control those times anymore, just so you know. One is the 3rd trimester in utero. You no longer can control that. Your first year of life, and then during puberty. Those are the 3 times where fat cells are rapidly produced. Now, what they recommend then is that during those times for children, that overfeeding doesn't occur, because you're more likely then to have obesity issues as you get older, if we see that. So that's one way where genes can play a factor. There have been studies that have seen if you have 2 obese parents, you're about 75 to 80% more likely to be obese yourself, the child is. If you have 1 obese parent, 1 lean parent, the child's risk is about 40 to 50% higher. If you have 2 lean parents, the child has about a 15 to 20% risk of becoming obese. So there is a connection there. There might also be, the other thing that's taking place, though, is just social behavior within that family. So how the family is eating, it's probably rubbing off. If you have 2 obese parents, the kid is probably getting that overfeeding too, or the same kind of foods that aren't healthy as well. So there might be some of that playing a factor as well. But genes can make a difference. Your age. Now, there have been many studies. Your muscle, how much muscle you have in your body, does impact how many calories you burn, as we looked at before. And as you age, you do lose muscle. But what they've seen is that really decrease in resting metabolic rate based on age, because we do see that, it happens because of a decreased activity level. It happens because we're not moving as much. So if you think about how much activity you did at 20 and how much activity you did at 50, a lot less. I mean, I know I'm 37. I did a lot more activity at 27 even than I did at 37. Part of that is because of injury, knees, hips, back, shoulders. I just simply stopped doing certain things because I had injury or I had pain doing them. So you can see over time, as we get older, over a period of 20 or 30 or 40 years, lack of physical activity, it means the resting metabolic rate does not have to be as high to match that lack of physical activity that you're no longer requiring of it. So that makes a difference, your lack of physical activity. We can change that. We can increase our physical activity. We have control over that. Your fat-free mass or your muscles. Okay, muscle, between the age of 30 and 70, we lose about 1/4 pound of muscle a year. 1 pound of muscle requires about 5 to 7 calories a day to maintain itself. If you lose a pound of muscle in a year, you could gain a pound of fat in a year. Okay, that doesn't sound like a lot, but over 30 years, you can put on 25 pounds. That'd be pretty easy. There was a study, and this is what I love. This also was a study that used women. So if you know it applies to women, it's got to apply to men. So what they found, they took women, young athletic women who were between the ages of 18 and 65 years old. And they also took sedentary women in the same age range. They evaluated the women's body fat percentage, how much lean mass they had, how much muscle they had, and their resting metabolic rates. What they found was that there was no difference between the athletic 65-year-old women and the athletic 18-year-old women. Same amount of fat, same lean muscle, almost the same resting metabolic rate. There was a great difference between the sedentary 65-year-old woman and the athletic 65-year-old woman. This, again, is hope. If we can maintain our muscle. And if we maintain our muscle, we maintain our resting metabolic rate. So again, great hope. Menopause happens to be another women's topic here, but a lot of times, ladies, we just don't think about this. That menstrual cycle requires calories. It requires a physical reaction in the body. In fact, about 2 weeks before the menstrual cycle begins, you're actually burning 200 to 300 calories a day more. Once menopause hits, no more menstrual cycle, no more need for that extra 200 to 300 calories a day during that 2-week time frame. If you don't change your eating habits and lower your calorie intake, 4 to 6 pounds a year is easily gained because you're eating more, but you don't need it. And that's how the body works. Calories in, calories out. You eat food, calories come in. How many calories are expended through our metabolism or these energy processes determine whether or not we gain or maintain or lose weight. If you eat more calories than what your body needs, than what it's expending in its metabolism, then the body's going to store those calories. Oftentimes, it gets stored as fat. That's one of the places it gets stored as. So that's an easy way that we can see how we can gain weight. Our dietary habits, the type of food can make a difference. The type of food can definitely make a difference. We see that protein is a super food. It really is. As far as calorie burn is concerned, protein takes more calories to be converted into energy, but it yields more energy once that happens. In comparison to, say, carbohydrate or glucose, it takes less energy to make energy from carbohydrate, and it yields less energy. The good thing about glucose is if you're really having a low blood sugar moment and you can't function, you're going to get energy right away if you eat it, carbohydrate. Protein's going to take a little bit longer. We'll look a little bit later more when we look at the thermic effect of food. We'll actually see which foods take the most energy to digest. Okay, but the type of food you make makes a difference. Fasting is not a good idea, your dietary habits, so how you eat. Skipping breakfast, not a good idea. A very low calorie intake and exercise at the same time, not a good idea. That's been shown to actually slow your metabolism down, lower the metabolic rate. Your body's trying to adjust and adapt to not having that food, so the metabolic rate slows down. So that combination is not good. When I work at the fitness center, this is something I see very, very, very frequently with people. I see they're exercising, that's great. They're cutting their calories, which is good, but you can get too low. And then they're not eating enough protein. Because when they're cutting their calories, they think, well, I should start eating that lettuce and all those vegetables and all those fruits, but I certainly can't have chicken or tuna. They forget about that. They want to spend their calories on their carbohydrates instead. Well, protein is how your body rebuilds muscle or repairs muscle. And as we looked at before, muscle requires energy, requires calories every day to be burned. If you're losing muscle on a daily basis because you're not consuming enough protein or enough calories, you're going to be doing this vicious exercise cycle where exercise is getting you nowhere. Whenever you exercise, you break down muscle. Okay? That's how it works. Especially when you lift weights, you're breaking muscle down. In order to get yourself stronger, your body reacts and tries to rebuild your muscle. That's why you take about 2 days off before you do lift weights again. Your body's repairing, rebuilding that muscle. If you don't have protein in your diet to rebuild that muscle, it's going to have to get that protein from somewhere else. So it'll take other muscle and break that down to fix that muscle you just tore. So in the end, you're nowhere farther than you were. You're not ahead in your muscle gain. You're spinning your wheels. So that makes a huge difference how you eat. So not fasting, not lowering that calorie intake. That's a big one. We'll look at that in one of our tips later on as well. And then hormonal factors. You have things like estrogen, for example, which they see that for women specifically, when the estrogen level's lower after menopause, you see that testosterone kind of takes a little more of a dominant area in a woman's life, and you tend to see more, if you gain fat, more fat storage in the abdominal region. That's one of the theories behind that. Cortisol is a stress hormone, so we can all be affected by this. What a cortisol does is it increases our appetite. So, and it happens, it is released if you are sitting in the car and there's a driver that's doing some crazy stuff in front of you, and you're just sitting venting and fuming at that driver. You have an increase in stress hormone being released. Your body does that because it thinks you're going to fight or flee, but you're just sitting there at the wheel fuming, okay? So that hormone's being released, it's causing you to stimulate your appetite, to replace that energy that it thinks you're going to use to fight or flee, but you're not. So now you're hungry and you haven't burned any calories fighting or fleeing either, and you eat more. So that can happen when you're family stress or work stress. It can happen if you don't get enough sleep. It can happen if you're not getting enough food. It can happen if you're over-exercising to the extreme. Those are all ways that your body can come under stress, that this hormone can be released that can stimulate your appetite. And that's one hormone. So stress management techniques. It's a great thing to learn. And then thyroxine. This is one of the hormones. Your thyroid, this is that thyroid hormone. It controls your metabolism. If it is not functioning up to par, you're going to easily be gaining weight. You're going to have a very difficult time losing weight. They recommend that women see a physician and get this tested regularly because this is something that can be off. It's that TSH number. So if you're having trouble with weight change, and especially if it's rapid weight gain, it's like, in the last month I've gained 4 pounds and I really haven't changed my exercise or eating habits, you should see your physician. You should ask your doctor, tell your doctor what's going on. They can do a test to see what that level is at. Okay, those are some things that reflect a resting metabolic rate. Well, how do I measure my resting metabolic rate? How many calories am I burning simply at rest? And by the way, we recommend that you don't go below this number of calories that you need because your body, simply organ function, needs this resting metabolic rate number of calories. If you're doing nothing, your body still needs that number of calories a day. So when you're trying to lower your body weight and you're cutting out calories, this is an important number to know because we recommend when we do our metabolic testing that you don't go below that number, or you're going to slow your metabolism down. You're slowing that resting metabolic rate down. So there are two equations, there are a couple of equations in your handout that I passed out to you. One equation is for your resting metabolic rate, and we're not going to go through and have you do the math on your own here because there is a bit of math. For those of you who don't like it a little bit, you might want to grab that calculator. But I have an example of a female who weighs 165 pounds. She's 5'5", and her age is 50. If we did that calculation in method 1, she needs about 1,421 calories. That's her basal energy expenditure, or her resting metabolic rate. She needs about 1,421 calories just to maintain, if she did nothing but sit in a chair all day, that's what her body would need. Now, when you use calculations like this, they have ranges of error. And sometimes the range of error is plus or minus 500 calories. That's huge. Okay, big. So you could, when you do the equation, you could try using that number that you get. If after a week you're not seeing any change at all, you might have to go down a little bit with the number of calories. So go down by 100 and see if that makes a change. Method 2, it actually calculates your total energy expenditure. So it actually considers the physical activity you do in a day, okay? How physically active you are, whether or not you exercise. And that one's a little quicker, the math is, especially if you're sedentary. You take your current weight in pounds and you multiply it by that activity level score, depending if you're sedentary or you're moderately active or you're very active. Okay, and so you come out with a number. You can see what that client who was sedentary came out with a number of 1,250. So that's what that person needs to consume in a day to maintain their weight. That's a very different number from the first one in method 1, right? Very different number. Notice method 2 didn't consider how old they were, didn't consider the gender, didn't consider their height. So again, the range of error could be there. That might work for you, but it might not. Method 3, if you don't like to do math, you can let the computer do it for you. Go to choosemyplate.gov. That's the USDA's website. And if you go to daily food plan, they actually ask you to put in your height, your weight, your gender, your activity level, and they will print out the number of calories that they recommend using an equation. Okay. Then method 4 I have here is actually to test your resting metabolic rate. And this is something that we do at Mercy Fitness Center. We use New Leaf Metabolic Testing. And what we do is we have you wear a mask. That's what the person is doing on the picture on the right-hand side. You wear a mask. It collects the oxygen you breathe in and the carbon dioxide you exhale. Oxygen is involved in how your body creates energy. And so when we're measuring how much oxygen is being taken in, they're measuring what's happening there. The carbon dioxide is the byproduct of the energy expenditure there. And so by measuring those two things, the machine can tell you within 100 calories what your resting metabolic rate is. So, and it's built for you, custom for you. It's not based on an equation. You know what the range of error is. It could be plus or minus that number. So when we have people do the metabolic testing, it takes about 15 or 20 minutes for them to sit in a chair. You don't move. You actually try not to think. We have you face a blank wall because thinking burns calories, right? So you don't want to do that. And then when a person's done, I usually recommend I had mine done a couple of months ago. It's like 1,350 calories. So I don't go below 1,350 calories. And then I have to figure out how many calories I burn through exercise to make sure that if I eat 1,350 calories a day, that's great. That's what my body needs. But if I exercised 400 calories off doing the elliptical trainer, now I only gave my body, like 950 calories? I'm not at that 1,350 anymore. Remember before how I talked about people make the mistake of going low in their calories and then exercising too, and now you're really low in that calorie level? So I need to make sure that I eat that extra 400 calories that I burned off too, so that I maintain that 1,350 calorie range. So I eat 1,750 calories, and then I'm back down to that 1,350. I would do that if I'm trying to lose weight, okay? If I want to maintain weight, I have to factor in my daily activity, and our machine does that for you too. But that's how that works specifically. There are other machines. I know there's something called a Bodybugg, and that's something that you wear on your arm like 24 hours a day, and it measures your temperature. And so it's looking at how your body heat is changing, and it's measuring how many, and then you can plug that into the computer, and it tells you how many calories you're burning at different times of the day. So there are other devices out there. These are just the ones that I know about. But it's important to know what your resting metabolic rate is if you're trying to lose weight. I know that I'm going to do the test again when I'm 40, when I'm 42, when I'm 45. These are all the ages the ladies tell me that it's hard to lose weight or when they gain weight. 50, 55, 60, those are all the ages that I see that people are telling me that these things are happening. So the other thing that I can do, though, is I can maintain my exercise level. I can maintain my strength. And then I'll maintain my metabolism, and hopefully I won't have as many problems. Besides your resting metabolic rate, there's the thermic effect of food. There's how many calories my body uses when I eat. So eating helps. And there's three things that factor into how many calories you burn when you eat. The type of food you eat, the composition of it, the amount eaten at one time, And then the frequency of your meals. So the composition of food. All right, this is where I said protein, really good food. Protein, for every 100 calories of protein you consume, it takes about 27, 28 calories to digest it. For every 100 calories of carbohydrate you consume, it takes about 23. And for every 100 calories of fat you consume, it takes about 5. Right. So we're burning a lot more calories when we're eating protein. And remember when I mentioned before that protein actually gives you more energy when it's broken down into smaller categories like amino acids and then created into ATP. It actually takes more energy to do that, but it gives you more energy. That's why you have all the high protein diets out there that are very popular. Okay? So that's the reason why they do burn a lot of energy. We look at fiber. Fiber takes quite a bit of energy to be digested, and I think the recommendation is 24 grams of fiber a day for women. Most women get about half that. Recommendation is about 35, 36 grams a day for men. Most men get about half that. When fiber is very difficult to digest, it takes more energy, it takes more calories to digest fiber. You could not absorb, I guess is how I'm going to put it, 90 calories less a day. You can absorb 90 calories less a day from the food you eat if you get 24 grams of fiber for women, 35 grams for men. So basically, I just ate something and it doesn't count because I had 24 grams of fiber or 35 in my day. I burn less calories because fiber takes that much energy to digest. So increase that fiber intake. The amount of time, the amount eaten at one time. If we overeat at one sitting, and you'll know this because you feel full, you're like, oh, my stomach just feels like it's big, expanding. You only have so many receptor sites in your body for nutrients, and once those receptor sites are full, your body's going to have to store those extra calories that you just consumed. So it might store those extra calories as fat, most likely. The other thing that's going to happen is that your metabolism is going to slow down. That thermal effect of food is kind of depressed a little bit because of that. So overeating at one sitting, not a great idea. Splitting up your meals into smaller portions as opposed to getting too full and bloated at one meal. So that Thanksgiving meal, watch it next time. Break up that food. The frequency of your meals. Eating breakfast increases your metabolism by 5%. Stop skipping breakfast. I used to be a breakfast skipper, so I can speak from experience. Eating breakfast increases your metabolism by 5%. You're burning half your calories right there. Add fiber into your diet, and you're pretty much got to eat for free. So 5%. Now, some people say, well, I'm just never hungry in the morning. I'm never hungry until 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, if you have work third shift and you wake up at 10 o'clock in the morning, I understand that. But you can, if you start eating at a regular time every morning, 7 o'clock, even if you're not hungry, eventually your stomach's going to start growling at 7 o'clock every morning. It's going to know it wants food at that time. So you can train your body to want breakfast again. All right? Again, it's going to help increase the metabolism. And then waiting too long between meals can slow down your metabolic rate as well. So skipping lunch and just waiting for dinner, all right? Or skipping dinner and you ate lunch at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and not eating again until 9 o'clock the next day. That slows your metabolism down. Again, not something that we're going for. That's going to make the food that you eat much more difficult to process. Let's look at the thermic effect of exercise. When I say exercise, I mean 3 things. The activities of daily living, like just brushing your teeth, washing the dishes, fidgeting, and then actual going out, what you guys probably and I think of as exercise. So, for example, activities of daily living. When you answer the phone, stand up and talk to somebody. You burn twice as many calories as if you were sitting down. Even better yet, walk back and forth in your living room while you're talking on that phone because you burn 3 times as many calories as if you were sitting down. Again, think of as we get older, we do less physical activity. How do we put that physical activity back in our lives? These are some little ways we can do it. Fidgeting. This was an interesting study. So they overfed people by 1,000 calories a day. That's a lot. They overfed them by 1,000 calories a day. Everybody in the group started moving more to compensate for the fact they were eating more. Their body just naturally started moving more. But what they noticed was that the people who fidgeted, and so they tapped their toe or they flicked their pen, they were moving even when they were sitting. Those people gained on average about 3 pounds during that 8-week study. The people who didn't fidget gained 16. All right, so next time you're sitting, I was in my Bible study yesterday, and I thought of this, and I'm like, okay, I'm moving my foot, I'm spinning my ankles around, I'm burning calories. So fidgeting makes a difference. And then you have, of course, exercise. You use many more calories to exercise when you exercise at higher intensities, okay? So higher intensity is a good level to be at. The more vigorous your exercise, the more calories you're going to burn after you're done with exercise. So there's kind of like an afterburn effect that we can call it. That's not the technical term, but afterburn effect from exercise. And if you exercise at a vigorous pace, and that might be that you walked very, very briskly. If you were talking with somebody as you were walking, you could talk to them, but you couldn't carry on a conversation. You could maybe say a sentence or two, and then you gotta let them talk because you're huffing and puffing while you're doing that walking, okay? That's vigorous exercise. One of the studies showed, they did this with female athletes, and they found that they burned on average about 12% more calories after exercise for about a 9-hour period of time after their vigorous exercise than when they didn't exercise. Okay, so exercise and vigorous exercise will burn more calories afterwards, which is nice. One of the things that study also showed, though, was that the individuals who ate after exercise, they replenished their body of the calories they just burned. And I love it when people come to me at the fitness center and they say, okay, I just burned off 300 calories, now I can have my donut or whatever it is. That's how they look at it. Eating after exercise, really good idea. What you eat after exercise, really important. So we'll talk about what that might be. So going to Panera afterwards and having your bagel, maybe not as effective as having like ham on your bagel, which would be good. But what they showed is that those people who did not replace the calories that they just burned off with exercise, they didn't have that post-afterburn effect. So don't starve yourself after you exercise. That's the moral of the story. You should be eating within half an hour to an hour. That's what we're trying to shoot for with exercise. All right, let's look at these suggestions now. 10 tips to improving your metabolism. Number 1, strength train with a purpose. All right? When you go do your strength training, and by strength training, I mean that you have dumbbells, or you're using your own body weight, like with push-ups or squats, or you have machines, but you are trying to tax the muscle so that muscle has to be like, say to itself, what the heck did they just do to me? I'm gonna have to get stronger to get ready for what for when they do that again to me. And so you need to feel it in the muscle. The muscle needs to get very tired within about 6 to 15 repetitions, all right? So if you can do more than 15 repetitions with correct technique, I'm doing my shoulder presses, correct technique, I can do this for 30 times in a row. That is not with a purpose. That is not going to increase your muscle. That is not going to benefit your metabolism, all right? That does not make you the athletic older person who had that resting metabolism of the younger athlete, okay? So you need to make sure that you strength train with a purpose. Now, in order to do that, you're going to need some professional help because it's easy to get hurt, especially as we get older. So you need somebody, a personal trainer, somebody to guide you and teach you how to do that. And you don't start at the hardest level. You start at level 1, you work up to level 2, you work up to level 3. But even if I'm working at level 1, I should still feel that muscle get very tired after the first set of 15, okay? If that's what the rule needs to be, if I can do more than 15, it's too light, make that your rule. If you can do more than 12, if you're working on bone density, men and women have to worry about this, bone density purposes, if you can do more than 12 repetitions, the weight's not going to benefit your bone density. So that's even better, and that's even going to build up more muscle. When we say building muscle, I know the guys are like, yeah, build muscle, great. Ladies are like, I don't want to get bulky. You cannot get bulky, ladies. You cannot get bulky. You do not have as much testosterone as the men. That's not going to happen. And you would have to make lifting weights your life if you were going to really try to do that. And you would have to radically change your diet to do that. So that cannot happen. Please do not be afraid of that. The only thing you should be afraid of, men and women, when strength training is getting injured. So make sure that your technique is good. Exercise with a purpose, and then eat after you exercise. Going for your walks is fantastic. Keep going for your walks. If you want to get that afterburn effect, go for a vigorous walk, okay? Or a vigorous bike ride. You got to get that heart rate up there. You should be feeling the sweat, okay? It should be difficult. You don't have to run. You don't have to do that. But you have to feel like, I'm making my body do something it normally does not do on a regular basis, and I wish I could stop in the next 5 minutes. But I'm going to keep going. Okay, you're always kind of there. That vigorous exercise has that afterburn effect associated with it. And then eat after you exercise. Your meal combination should have protein and carbohydrate. I could get really technical and tell you in a 4-to-1 ratio is the best. 4 grams of carbohydrate to 1 gram of protein, but I doubt anybody would go and probably measure that. So like a turkey sandwich is good. Whole wheat, preferably. That kind of thing. But you need some protein with your carbohydrate. Why you do that is because you actually replace muscle glycogen, which is the stored energy in your muscle. You replace that at a greater rate if you do that. So tomorrow when you go and exercise is going to feel better when you do that. Okay? Protein, of course, helps fix muscle too. So you definitely always want to have protein in your diet. Eat with a purpose. So put good things into your body. Think about breakfast. Do I have protein at breakfast? Do I have fruit, in the middle of the afternoon? Have I had my vegetables today? Have I had my dairy today? So eat with a purpose as opposed to just going, well, what's available? What's in the cabinet? Let me just get rid of the pantry. Let's try to find the good things to eat. That doesn't mean you never get a cookie. I love a good cookie. But we do it at the appropriate times. It's not every meal I'm having cookies, or it's high sugar, or no protein. So think about what your body needs. Eat breakfast. Okay, the next 3 things that are suggestions. Dr. Nate Brady, who was one of our new occupational physicians at Mercy, these were his suggestions. He started his own bariatric clinic, he told us, and so he did a presentation for us. And he talked about fixing metabolisms and what to do that. These are just 3 simple things out of many suggestions he had. Eat breakfast, but no carbohydrates. So that's one of his recommendations. So that would be a protein in the morning. Eggs, egg whites, a protein shake, that kind of thing is what it would be. Stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. When you go to bed on a little bit of a fast like that, your body will have to use stored fat, stored energy for fuel. Okay, so if you eat half an hour before you go to bed, then your body's just going to use some of those calories that you just ate for the activity that it has to do at night. Remember, guys, when we're sleeping, our body's still working. It's still using energy. It's still repairing itself. In fact, that's a big time that your muscle repairs itself. So there's still energy that's needed. If you feed it before you go to bed, then it's going to use that energy you just ate, part of that. If you don't feed it, it's going to use some of that stored energy. Okay, so that's one of his recommendations. Eat enough protein. He recommends about 3 times a day. Some of the studies show if you're physically active, like if you exercise 3 to 5 times a day or a week, about 1 gram per kilogram of your body weight. How many kilograms do I weigh? Well, it's your weight in pounds divided by 2.2. It's your weight in pounds divided by 2.2. Okay. So, but if you just eat protein 3 times a day, that's going to help get you there. So, protein in the morning, like as I mentioned before, eggs, good option. Meat is an option. Protein in the afternoon, got my turkey, got my chicken, got my fish, whatever it might be for you. Protein in the evening, same thing. Turkey, fish, chicken, meat, that kind of meat. Yogurt does have protein in it too. Peanut butter, not a great option. Okay? High in fat, high in calories, not a great source of protein. For the same amount of calories that are in 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, I can eat a whole chicken, and I get about 8 grams of protein in peanut butter, those 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, I get about 22 in the chicken. Big, big difference. I had about 2 grams of fat in the chicken, I got about 16 to 20 in the 2 tablespoons of protein, of peanut butter. So, even though they have good fats in peanuts, that's good, there are some, it can be high in saturated fat too. So, not a great source of that protein. So start eating that protein 3 times a day. Increase your fiber intake. As I already mentioned before, you're going to absorb less calories. So 24 for women, let's go 35 for men. Consult with your doctor. If you are having lots of trouble and the weight is just coming on pretty quickly, you don't understand why, ask your doctor. Tell your doctor what's going on. They can check those thyroid levels. They can check your hormones. Eat enough calories in your day. Log your eating. A lot of people will tell me, I ask them, so how many calories are you eating in a day? Because if you're having trouble losing weight, I want to know what's your calorie intake then, so we know. Well, I don't know, I've never done it before. Every single thing you put in your mouth, write it down. It's a pretzel, put it in your mouth, okay? Write it down. You got to know all those bites, licks, and tastes. What are you getting in the day? So you can actually be honest with yourself to know how many calories you really are consuming. Don't forget what you drink. Your drinks have calories, okay? So water doesn't, but don't forget. If you get a lemonade, my dad went to a restaurant for 30 years. If you're trying to watch what you eat, don't order lemonade when you go to a restaurant because it's just sugar water. That's all it is. It's pop without fizz. It has lots of calories in it, okay? So watch those kind of things too. And make sure you eat enough calories. Make sure if you're going to exercise and you're going to lower your calorie intake, that you're going to not go too low with your calorie intake. Slow that metabolism down. And then avoid fasting during the day or overeating at one sitting. Don't skip the breakfast, don't skip the dinner. Even if you have something small, you don't have to have a 1,000 calorie meal. Don't skip the meal. And avoid that overeating in one. We talked about many of these suggestions. Does anybody have any questions?
I wanted to ask, I keep a fairly active life. I'm out every day, but I do not do physical exercise in the way we think of it, setting aside the time for it. I wondered if you could still be moderately active without doing that physical.
So her question is she moves a lot during the day, but she doesn't have specific time she goes out and exercises. If you can get by just doing that. I would say if it's working for you, and obviously you've been around for a while and you're doing a good job, then if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? If the only thing that would benefit you is some type of strength training to help maintain bone density and maintain your muscle. So like getting out of a chair is still easy, going upstairs, moving your refrigerator if you have to, that kind of activity. And then that also will maintain the resting metabolism. So those are great things for people to do. But if it's working for you what you're doing, then don't change it. If it's not working for you and you're not happy with your body weight and you're not happy with where you're storing it, then that's when you need to fix it and change it and do more. Yeah. The one thing about doing continual exercise at a higher elevated heart rate range, though, is that it does strengthen your heart. It does help, if a person is fit, so if I can actually do a fitness test on you and I can see that your cardiovascular fitness is high, you are 50% less likely to die of everything. Cancer, heart disease, you name it, obesity, all of it. So 50% less likely. So, and that you get with just exercise, not your daily activity throughout the house. But yeah.
Should you eat smaller meals more often?
Should you eat smaller meals more often was one suggestion. I did read that. There was one study that was one of the suggestions would eat about 25% of your calories 4 different times during the day. So 25% for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then you have a snack. Or it's every 4 hours. I mean, I've seen all of that. If you just don't overeat, that should be good. If you're not eating to the point where you're getting uncomfortable in your stomach, that's stop before you're full is a good rule of thumb to follow too.